Hey everyone, welcome to Legacy Starts Today podcast. I am thrilled today to have my pastor and great friend, Chris Hodges, with us. I've been looking forward to this for many, many months. And so we're actually here together at the Kingdom Builder Summit. And I said, PC, that's what we call him. I said, PC, I said, would you do a podcast with me? And there's been no other leader in the body of Christ that's had a greater impact on my life than Pastor Chris. And so love you a ton, appreciate you. And
thank you.
You know, yeah.
I need to send this to my mom. I like that.
Well, it's been neat watching. You know, you and I have been friends, have known each other for over, I don't know, since 1997 when I was at Bethany as just a business guy. And whenever I needed great golfers, I would convince Rick Bezet and Chris Hodges to come and bail me out because I'm an awful golfer. But
and we won too.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, in those business tournaments, they were like, "Who is this team?" And it was like it's a group of pastors and one business guy. You know, so we had a lot of fun. But just seeing the miracle of Church of the Highlands, and you know, when you moved and planted Ark number 1, and it really has been a miracle. You know what God's done in and through Church of the Highlands, and over the years. Now that we've been at Highlands for 6 years and just love it, it's called Birmingham to me.
Come on.
And so we're having the best time of our lives right now. But, you know, getting to know your family, your wife, we travel some together. We spend a lot of time with each other and have a lot of fun and eat real good.
That's right.
But so it's a joy, Pastor, for you to be
thank you
on our podcast.
Love you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I want to make the most of this time. And, you know, you're known as a leader of leaders. You're known as a systems guy. You're known as all these different, as someone who manages resources very well. You're also known as a man of prayer. You're known as someone who, some of the core principles of Highlands, first birth and prayer, things that a lot of people see the fruit of Highlands, but they're not maybe applying all of those same things. And that's been deeply rooted in you. So if you could, for some of the listeners don't know, you know, if you could give and maybe unpack some of your personal story, I think that would be a great way to start.
Well, my dad was the greatest financial mind I ever knew. And he was a very principle-centered person. Yeah. He always said, if you choose your principles, then you'll be ready for any kind of pressure. And then you choose the principle over the pressure every time, and you'll be fine. And so, but you have to have those settled before the pressure comes. And so Dad had me tithing before I was even a Christian. I mean, we'd get $5 in a birthday card from a relative, and Dad say, 50 cents of that belongs to the Lord. I mean, that'd be his first word, you know. And so I was raised with these principles. I had a checking account when I was 10 years old. You know, I remember the first time I got my interest statement. It was a letter with a dime taped to the letter.
Wow.
You know, the bank sent us.
That's a long time ago.
Exactly, it was a long time when they did it that way. And, so Dad lay on my bed and teach me how to budget. And so, and then when I got into ministry, my pastor, same way, very principle-centered person. And there were just some non-negotiables, and prayer was one of those. And really, honestly, all things first. So I really see prayer as giving God the first of your day, not just spending time with God.
So good.
And I see, our 21 days of prayer that we do that starts every year as a tithe of the year, so to speak. It's just like, before we do anything else, your first place. And so these are principles that I'm convinced too, Lee, that they lead to incredible success. Because anytime you honor God first, whether it be in prayer, your finances, or in your life, or your time, or whatever, going to church. I've never missed a Sunday in church in my entire life. My mom and dad had me in church from the Sunday after I was born, and it was never an option. If you were sick, Dad, get a bag you can throw up at church. I mean, it was just, we're not missing.
Wow.
And so, and so as I look back now, I'll be 58 this year. I'm just very grateful for those, principle-centered things that were imparted to me by those two great men.
You know, when we moved in 6 years ago to Birmingham and to serve and volunteer at Highlands, and then later came on the team, is people would ask me, they say, "Well, man, you've gotten close to PC. What's it like and all that?" And I said, besides he eats really good and he has a great time and loves life, but he's extremely disciplined.
Yeah.
And you choose the things. You have the ability, and I want every listener to hear this, because it's a strong character trait, is you have the ability to say no to certain things, to wait for something. But you say no to maybe good, and you're waiting on God to do something 10 times better. And I've watched you do that. So you'll it's like when there's ideas, when there's people have ideas all the time, they want to do this, they want this direction, that direction. And if it's outside of those principles, you don't negotiate on that.
So I read a great book I would recommend to your listeners called Essentialism. Now, I already had this principle, just like you said, but this quote says it all. And the writer said, if you'll say no, you'll trade popularity for respect.
Wow.
And so it's really, it's a lifestyle of just saying, I know what I do, I know what I don't do. I know where I go, I know where I don't go. I know what I spend on, I know what I don't spend on. I know who I hang out with, I know who I don't hang out with. It's making some of those, again, principle-centered decisions.
So say that again. Say no.
If you can learn to say no, you'll trade popularity for respect.
Wow.
It's a great book. And it's the art of saying no, this book called Essentialism. And it reduces your life down to the essentials. And that's really what I had learned to do even before I read the book, but the book's a great resource for people to get.
Let's talk about the local church. You and I both are passionate. We truly believe and have bought in completely to the local church, empowered as the hope of the world. And you're seeing it in overseeing Grow and Arc, and just God's given you tremendous influence. You have a heart for church planters because you were one, but you have a heart too for them not to stay where they're at and to grow. And I remember one time at a Grow conference, you said, it's God's will for your church to grow.
Absolutely.
And let's talk. There's two things I'd like to touch on. Is what do you see as the current condition of the local church? And then also, what are some opportunities that we have that God's uniquely positioned? Because I believe He's uniquely positioned us in this hour, in spite of the craziness we've had. It's like heavy dependence upon Him, and it's like He's teeing us up to where the church is the answer.
Well, unfortunately, the current condition, it's not in great shape. A lot of pastors are discouraged, especially those pastors who were in portable type situations. But because of the COVID restrictions, many of them are in schools now where the school doesn't let them meet anymore. So it's really been a difficult thing. And then all things 2020 that happened got pastors into a kind of a dark place. And so we're actually focusing this year in 2021, and really I think it's going to go a couple years deeper, just into pastoral health. So we're actually building this 20-question assessment. We're even building, as you well know, we're calling it a recovery center, a place where they can come and be refreshed and trained. And because I think that's the greatest problem. If you want to know what the current condition is, I think it's that. The opportunity is that when people are hurting, the gospel does its best work.
Wow. So
this is a great time. Before, when everybody's happy, you have to make some really good coffee. The coffee has to be great. And so you're doing everything you can to attract people. When people are hurting, we're not focusing right now on some of those seeker type tools. Now, it doesn't mean we stop doing them. It just means that's not what's drawing people anymore. I think they're looking for authentic help. They're looking for authentic presence of God, honestly. And so we're kind of going a little old school in our preaching style, in our worship style, because people are really desperate. Everything bad is up in people's lives. So addiction's up, alcoholism's up, domestic violence is up, divorce is up, depression's up, mental health, everything bad is up. So when they're hurting, they come and they seek the only answer. We have the words of life. So that's the opportunity.
Yeah, and I think it's just tremendous opportunity. One of the things that I've watched being able to be a part of Church of the Highlands is it's ingrained in our team and our staff. It's in the DNA that we're to give away what we've learned and what we've lived. And I think if you can't really, it's almost like God gives you an authority in an area when it's both. It's when you've learned it and then you've actually lived it. And I've seen that. I've seen that through Grow, seen it through Arc. I want to talk a little bit about Grow. I know that's something that's near and dear to your heart because it's really you giving your life away. And, for those of you that don't know much about Grow, is, it's really birthed out of Church of the Highlands. And something that you felt God really say, hey, I want you to help 1,000 churches break 1,000. Unpack a little bit of that for us. And then where do you see grow in this current environment? And because churches are needing help now more than ever. They're needing decisive leadership. It's not just content. They're needing dependence upon God. And but in kind of where is Grow going to have a conference this year? I mean, just if you could unpack a little bit of that.
Well, actually, I don't know if you know this story or not, that we started ARC and we started training church planners, and some existing pastors, so pastors who already had churches were coming to our church planter sessions. And I was saying, this is for new churches. I mean, but they said, but we want these techniques. So we knew ARC had created this appetite and desire for some of the things that we were teaching these new church planners. So I was actually in prayer, and we were in our 21 days in 2011, just pacing, really honestly minding my own business. I wasn't even asking God, give me some fresh revelation. And I heard the Lord say, help 1,000 churches under 1,000 in attendance break that barrier. And I don't think, by the way, Lee, that's some magical number that churches need to strive to get to. I'm a numbers guy, and God, I think God just was speaking my language. But that's 1 million people if you can do it.
Wow.
So if you can touch that many. And so I talked to the team, Grow was born, but it's unique in that it's helping existing churches reach their growth potential, is how I say it now. So I really don't throw in that 1,000 number as much anymore, but we just want them to reach whatever their growth potential is. And so, so if we've been resourcing them through relationship conferences and resources, so they need training. Yeah. And it's really a school. It's probably our conferences and our events look nothing like every other conference they go to, because all the other ones, they'll inspire the fire out of you, get some of the best speakers in the world to preach to you. But you leave there. I leave so many times from conferences thinking, I loved it, but I don't have a clue how to do what you just told me.
Wow.
I loved it, but I'd love to know where you got that screen and how much it costs, and can I have one? You know, I loved it. I mean, I look around and I sure would love to have this many people come to my church too, but tell me how you did that. And so what I thought was missing in the body of Christ was just practice. So we made decisions like we wouldn't have vendors out on the foyer where we're selling you a bunch of stuff. There were no guest speakers. It's here's where we bought that screen, and here's how we hung it. Here's, and so we give everybody this backstage pass to, it's so cool at Grow, because we'll have these between sessions, people are on the stage, in the drum cage, in the sound booth. They're just figuring it all out, and all of the team, they're ready just to share every little detail of here's how we did it, and here's how you can do it too.
I didn't fully appreciate it till I got there, and I remember going to my first Grow conference, and I remember Hamp Green telling me, he said, Lee, Hamp Green's on the lead team at Church of the Highlands, and wonderful guy, and Hamp's like, he goes, just get ready, buckle up. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I've been to great conferences, all of this. And I left after that 2.5 days, and I told my wife, Laura, I was like, that was one of the most powerful things I've ever seen. And I think it's one of the best things that we do as a church, because it has this replicating logarithmic increase of people. They're inspired already. What they need is the tools to do the how-to.
Absolutely. And they don't know. They really don't know. You can go to conferences and think, boy, that pulpit's pretty cool. Where did you get it? And you don't know. No one's ready to tell you, or how to put a sermon together, or how to build a team, or how many days a week do you actually spend in the office, and what should I do, and how would I get one of those? So in every aspect of church building, which I honestly just feel like I'm a church builder, and I love sending it to others. Here's what we've done over the years, though, Lee, is that every decision we've made as a church, we've asked ourselves, could another church do it? And if what we were building was something that only Highlands could do, we actually chose not to do it. We wanted to build a model that was both scalable and transferable, so it can happen at any size, and it can happen anywhere, in any culture. And so today, we're helping over 15,000 churches with our resources, and our conferences fill up in half a day now. And, 6 months out, we'll be full in half a day once the registration opens. But to God be the glory. It's the most fun thing ever.
Well, it is powerful, and we're going to be having our Grow conference this year at the end of July. And if anyone wants to get any information about Grow, you can go to growleader.com. Great resource site, especially there for churches. and our team can help you. I'm really excited about growing its future and just what God's doing. We've been hearing as a staff, as a team, we've been hearing kind of as you father us in some of these staff meetings, and you've been really setting a tone and about how values have been a missing component now. And I remember I was sitting next to one of the pastors on the team, and we're in a staff meeting, and you were being very clear on your vision. And I was eating it up, as a guy who has owned several businesses, some of them large and with teams, and I just like candid, decisive leadership. And as you're setting the tone with this, I remember I look over and lean over to this young pastor, and I said, "Dad's home."
Yep.
But it brought order. But then you were pastoring us in this whole dynamic of where there is no value system. I mean,
Right.
we have lost that.
Right.
Can you share a little bit about that? Because I know God's put that on your heart, and then I want to get to your new book coming out.
Well, every organization has to demand shared vision and shared values. So you really, the Bible says, how can two walk together unless they agree?
Yeah.
Okay, so they don't even have to be one better than the other, but we have to have the same. Okay, so our vision, of course, is the Great Commission, but our values are the things that that vision is built on. I think we saw in 2020. I think it exposed the lack of values in a variety of areas. For a church, theological values they're all over the place. You have ethical values, just how do we treat people? Who walks through the door first when an elderly person walks up? Simple little things like that, courtesy, kindness. And then there's also just values of ethics and morality that I think I think they're being challenged right now in a culture that's kind of pushing the limits of everything. And so I'm just honestly trying to get ahead of it to make sure, hey, here's what we believe. Mm-hmm. And here's what we believe about this issue. And a lot of people would call these political issues, but they're not. They're biblical issues. I mean, issues of life, what God believes about marriage, what God believes about our sexuality and our identity, what God says about our finances, what he says about the scriptures. Are they holy or are they not? Are they inerrant or they're not? And it's just reaffirming some things to we have an organization that can be built in a solid way.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. I know that one of the things that I heard you say that really helped me a lot, because different people would ask me to respond to different things, because it wasn't just a pandemic for the COVID. It was pandemic politically, economically, race,
racially,
all of it. It was all these, like 4 of them, all at one time. And I remember this, and it really set me free. And you said this. You said, if God's already spoken on an issue, why does my opinion even matter?
Yeah, people ask me all the time, what do you think about, and honestly, I probably should answer their question because they're not asking it to deny God's word, but it's just fun for me to do this. I kind of do it for fun first. I always say, what makes you think my opinion's important? Yeah. And I'm trying to prove a point right off the bat that God has spoken. In a lot of areas, God has already spoken. And let's see what he says first, because I think what we're going to be called to as business leaders and especially church leaders is coming back to what God says about a thing. Anytime we step outside of that, anytime we think, well, I think, well, in a sense, we've become a God unto ourselves. Yeah. We've created a religion around us. And so you really, I'm not one of those that thinks you can pick and choose the parts of the Bible you want to agree with and the ones that aren't so convenient anymore. Let God be true and every man a liar, the Bible says, and he must increase, I must decrease. And I love what Jimmy Evans says, dear friend, pastor friend of mine. He says, people just love building on the sand. And Jesus says, you got to build it on the rock. But humanity loves the sand. You go to the beach, they're there. Not many people laying on jagged rocks. He says, but on the sand will conform to you. Lay down on that sand for about an hour, and when you get up, it'll have the shape of your body on that sand.
Wow.
Lay on the rock, the scars of the rock will be on you.
Wow.
You'll conform to it. And I think this generation's wanting the world to conform to them, when God says, no, you can't build your house on a sand. You got to build it on the rock and let the rock, you conform to it.
That's so good. That's so good. Well, as you've got a new book coming out, and I'm privy to knowing some backside information and all of that. But there's a journey that you went through, even in your own life. And, and I think that this book probably has the potential to help more people in such a way. It's like God's touched it and the timing of it. And, but I want you to share, I don't want to to overspeak, but I want you to share how the book came about, and then how can people get it?
So about 2.5 years ago, there was what felt like a rash of pastoral suicides. None of the guys I knew, but everybody was talking about it. And I'd really never thought much about depression. I mean, I'd gone through a few minor bouts of it, I would have said. But just that situation alone cost me to put one message together that I preached on a Sunday. Well, it became the most watched message times 100. And so then I brought it to a pastor's conference at another church. And again, same response. So that's when I knew, my goodness, I've hit a nerve. Now, I had my own experience, but it wasn't enough. So I went on a 2-year research project and a 2-year writing project and just finished it. And it's set to come out. And really, it's built around the life of Elijah, because Elijah had one of the greatest victories in the Bible.
Yeah.
People preached how he defeated the prophets of Baal, how God consumed a sacrifice that was water-soaked, 1 Kings 18. And just a few verses later, he's under a broom tree wanting to commit suicide. He literally goes from this emotional, spiritual high to one of the lowest moments in his life. And there were several things, about 6 things that Elijah did wrong. They're all revealed right there in 1 Kings 19. And there were 5 things he did right to get out of that depression place. And so I write about my own journey, and I'm actually very, very vulnerable. In fact, even in the middle of my writing project, I had a personal pastoral friend take his life. And so I walked through some things, even my own battles, and I think it has some authenticity. But one of the greatest discoveries, Lee, is that most medical professionals believe there's about 9 different causes of depression, 2 of which are genetic or biological, which means you might need some medical help. And I'm all for that, by the way. I have a son who has to have some medical help because of some of his issues. But 7 of them are not. They're things we do to ourselves, which should give people great hope. And one of my greatest discoveries is that depression is not a sickness, it's a signal. It's trying to tell you that you can do something a different kind of a way. And so the book is called Out of the Cave, because when Elijah finally dealt with it, he came out of the cave, and that's what I want to help people do, come out of the cave.
Come on. So how do I know the book is, I think we can pre-order it now?
Yeah, actually, it's on Amazon now for pre-orders, and that's actually important right now in the way books are sold in America. In order for books to get out, pre-orders actually are a big deal from the Amazon standpoint, but the actual copies will be released late April, early May.
So they can go, and the title of the book is Out of the Cave. They can go to Amazon, pre-order it now. That'll actually give people the chance to be able to have more in inventory to actually get it sooner and not be on back order. To all of you that are listening and watching, I would say this to you, that this is a book that every business leader, you ought to be buying for your teams. You ought to be buying it for your spouse. And every pastor, this would be a great book to get your kingdom builders, your legacy team, those that are along the journey with you, but also your own staff. And the one thing I've learned several things during the crisis, but one of them was that people respond to a crisis in different ways. Not everybody's going to respond differently, and we can't presume that everyone's okay.
In fact, they're not. In 2020, the World Health Organization released these numbers that 1 out of 4 people under the age of 30 contemplated suicide.
Wow.
1 out of 10 of the rest of us.
Wow.
So what 2020 didn't create, it was certainly exposed. It brought us all to kind of our breaking point for whatever reasons, and there were a lot of different reasons, from economics to national tensions to an election we'll all never forget, to quarantining, to lockdowns, to the economic, on and on and on. It brought us to our breaking point, and it kind of revealed what's really going on the inside. So most people believe now that actually depression is the #1 health crisis in the world. And so I'm very excited about it, and it is very, very needed.
Yeah. It's going to help a ton of people. So it's Out of the Cave on Amazon. Go ahead and pre-order now. I'd go ahead and pre-order today, and it'll get out in
late April, early May.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, Pastor, I love you a ton, and just thank you so much for coming and spending some time. And Laura and I just love you and Tammy.
Love you too, man.
And I'm just excited also about the future of what God has. There's no better place to be fulfilling what God's called you to. And so I just want to honor you as well. So
thanks,
thank
my
you.
friend. I love you much.
And remember, everyone, so thank you for joining us. Remember, Out of the Cave on Amazon. Get your copy today. Pre-order it. And then also, remember this, that your legacy starts today.